The necessary extinction of the young emperor and his mother imposed the fatal obligation of destroying completely the friends who hated and might punish the assassin, and the repetition of murder rendered him less willing and less able to forgive. The hard narrative of the victims whom he sacrificed by poison or the sword, by the sea or the flame, would be less expressive of his cruelty than the appellation of the past happier days, which was applied to the rare and bloodless week of repose. The tyrant strove to transfer on the laws and the judges some portion of his guilt, but the mask was fallen, and his subjects could no longer mistake the true author of their calamities. The noblest of the Greeks, more especially those who, by descent or allegiance, might dispute the Comnenian inheritance, escaped from the monster's den. Nice and Prussia, Sicily or Cyprus were their places of refuge, and as their flight was already criminal, they aggravated their offenses by an open revolt and the imperial title. Yet Andronicus resisted the daggers and the swords of his most formidable enemies. Nice and Prussia were reduced and chastised. The Sicilians were content with the sack of Thessalonica, and the distance of Cyprus was not more favorable to the rebel than to the tyrant. His throne was subverted by a rival without merit, a people without arms. Isaac Angelus, a descendant in the female line of the great Alexius, was marked as a victim by the prudence or superstition of the emperor. In a moment of despair, Angelus defended his life and liberty, slew the executioner, and fled to the church of St. Sophia. The sanctuary was insensibly filled with a curious and mournful crowd, who, in his fate, prognosticated their own. But their lamentations were soon turned to curses, and their curses to threats. They dared to ask, "Why do we fear? Why do we obey? We are many, and he is one. Our patience is the only bond of our slavery." With the dawn of the day, the city burst into a general sedition. The prisons were thrown open, the coldest and most servile were roused to the defense of their country, and Isaac, the second of his name, was raised from the sanctuary to the throne. Unconscious of his danger, the tyrant was absent, withdrawn from the toils of the state, in the delicious islands of the Propontis. He had contracted an indecent marriage with Alice, or Angus, daughter of Louis VII of France, and relict of the unfortunate Alexius, and his society, more suitable to his temper than to his age, was composed of a young wife and a favorite concubine. On the first alarm he rushed to Constantinople, in patience for the blood of the guilty, but he was astonished by the silence of the palace, the tumult of the city, and the general desertion of mankind. Andronicus proclaimed a free pardon to his subjects. They neither desired nor would grant forgiveness. He offered to resign the crown to his son Manuel, but the virtues of the son could not expiate his father's crimes. The sea was still open for his retreat, but the news of the revolution had flown along the coast. When fear had ceased, obedience was no more. The imperial galley was pursued and taken by an armed brigantine, and the tyrant was dragged to the presence of Isaac Angelus. Loaded with fetters and a long chain around his neck, his eloquence and the tears of his female companions pleaded in vain for his life, but, instead of the decencies of a legal execution, the new monarch abandoned the criminal to the numerous sufferers, whom he had deprived of a father, a husband, or a friend. His teeth and hair, an eye and a hand were torn from him, as a poor compensation for their loss, and for a short respite was allowed that he might feel the bitterness of death. Astride on a camel, without any danger of a rescue, he was carried through the city, and the basest of the populace rejoiced to trample on the fallen majesty of their prince. After 1,000 blows and outrages, Andronicus was hung by his feet between two pillars that supported the statues of a wolf and a sow, and every hand that could reach the public enemy inflicted on his body some mark of ingenious or brutal cruelty, till two friendly or furious Italians, plunging their swords into his body, released him from all human punishment. In this long and painful agony, "Lord, have mercy on me," and "Why will you bruise a broken reed?" were the only words that escaped his mouth. Our hatred for the tyrant is lost in pity for the man, nor can we blame his timid resignation, since a Greek Christian was no longer the master of his life. From being a prince to fighting in wars, being a prisoner, survived assassination attempts, escaping from prison, seducing princesses, fleeing to multiple countries, to being emperor, then to being brutally killed, there is no doubt that Andronicus lived a full and eventful life.